Hi, I'm Mike Wuellner, sales representative for Mackie Designs, and I'm here visiting the fine folks at Northern Sound and Light, showing them the new DL32R, and I'd like to take a few minutes and show it to you too. So the DL32R expands on the tremendous success that we've had with the DL series products, specifically the DL1608 and the DL804. And it all centers around what we call wireless mixing, or mixing on a wireless device, be it an iPad, iPhone, some kind of iOS device that allows you complete control of your mix from anywhere within the facility that you're mixing for. Now the 32R is a little bit different because it doesn't incorporate the iPad into the actual hardware. The hardware is kind of standalone, designed to sit up on the stage, and then the mixing engineer uses the iOS device to mix from any location within that facility through a wireless network. On the front panel of the DL32R hardware, we have 32 XLR microphone inputs, the last 8 of which are combo jacks that'll accept a 1/4 inch or XLR. We've got 2 monitor outputs. We've also got a headphone output with level control, as well as 14 XLR outputs. So this is actually a 32 by 14 configuration, a tremendous amount of mixing console in a very small space. Let me show you the back panel. On the back panel, we've got, of course, our AC power plug. We've got on-off switch. We've got a couple of fans to keep the unit cool. We've got an expandable card slot, which at some point in the near future will accept our soon-to-be-released Dante interface. Right now, it's supporting our network connection, which is where we plug our router into. And then we've got a couple of USB connections for playback and recording of USB drives. You'll also note on the surface of the top of the mixer, we've got these slots, and these slots are used in conjunction with these handy Velcro strips that come with the mixer to allow you to take your USB drives and network boxes and strap them to the top of the unit so that they reside on top of the unit right in your rack, and you don't have to worry about where you're going to put these outboard devices. So now we get to the software of the product. This is the Master Fader app. It's the same app that you download from the iTunes store for free. It's from Mackie Designs, called Master Fader. And this program will adapt itself depending on what mixer you're connected to, whether it's a DL806 or a DL1608 or the new DL32R. And we're going to start out with this icon right here. This is a very important navigational bar for the user. Starting out with this guy, this is where we actually connect to any units that are on the network so that this software knows how to configure itself. In this case, there's my DL32R on the wireless network. We can also select a product to work offline, set up shows, snapshots, do naming conventions on our input strips and so forth. So this is a very important screen. This is where you would actually connect to the DL. I'm already connected, so I'm not going to try it again. And then there's a couple of other screens which we'll get to eventually as well. But for right now, let's jump back to the far left. We have 3 different views that we can look at our mixer from. The first view is what we call a global view. And this basically shows you everything that the mixer has in it. It's not really a view that you'll mix from, but it's really just to see what's going on where, and allows us to quickly access whatever channel we choose to, whatever output we choose to, and so forth. The vast majority of the time you're going to be working on this second screen, which is our mix view. And this will show you the main output, which is always visible, which is very important, and it'll show you 8 input channels at a time. Now this area right here where the faders are is where you want to gesture to swipe. And I always try to swipe at the top of that so I don't, hit any faders accidentally. If you do hit a fader, it's very clear that you're controlling that. It actually expands to a little larger image and also glows. So it's very clear to let you know that, hey, you're touching a fader and you're making some adjustments. So this is our mix view. As I said before, we have access to all 32 inputs, as well as the returns 1 and 2, and returns 3 and 4. Now these returns are being tapped off of USB, and it can be a USB stick, it can be a USB drive. They're assuming a stereo signal, but they can also be broken out and unlinked to individual channels as well. So these are good for click tracks for a drummer, backing tracks, maybe some background vocals for a small ensemble that's playing, really anything that you want to play back. It could even just be break music if you want. And then we get into our reverb returns and delay returns. And you'll notice if I try to swipe down here, it's getting into another screen, which I'll get you in a minute. So we swipe up here. Then we've got our 6 submix outputs. We have 6 VCA outputs. Now the VCAs are a very, very powerful tool. They're different than the submixes because the submixes actually take whatever inputs you select and collectively give them gain to the left and right output. The VCAs don't do that. They don't actually drive those signals to another output. They basically act as a ganged fader, or it's the equivalent of grabbing multiple faders at a time and moving those in unison. So it's really just a way to collectively bring up and down the level of background singers, maybe your keyboard inputs, maybe your drum inputs, all simultaneously, so you don't change the mix. The nice thing about the VCAs is they operate post DSP, which means that if your drums are going to your reverb, as you bring those levels down collectively, it's also going to reduce the level into that reverb, which is what you want to make sure that the relationship between the reverb and the drums don't change. So we've gotten into our subgroup outputs and our VCAs and of course our left and right master. So that is the primary screen where you'll be working on most of the time. Now on the individual view, which is this third icon here, now we get into all of the parameters for that particular channel that's selected. So the first thing we look at is source. Now source A and B, source A is the hardwired mic input. Source B is the USB input. So if you were doing a multi-track playback, you'd go on to source B. Then we have the gain for input A, again the analog hardware input, and then we also have the trim for digital input B, again the USB drive. Over here we have 48 volt phantom power by channel. Now there's a global switch to turn phantom power on, but you can assign 48 volt phantom power by channel, which is really cool. And then we've also got a phase inversion button there. Now the DL32 has 6 subgroups, 6 VCAs, 6 mute groups, and 6 custom views. Now a custom view is a great tool. So say for instance you're in a house worship and you've got a worship band, you're using most of the mixer, but the head of education wants to have a meeting on Saturday and they just need a couple of mics. You can actually create a custom view so that only the microphones that you want that person to have access to are the microphones that will show up. So it makes it a much less cluttered work surface, so you can see only the active mic inputs that you want to, which is really, really nice. And this is where you would assign this particular channel to all of those groups. And then over here are levels to all of our 14 auxiliary sends, as well as to the reverb and delay. So we can actually go to this channel. He needs a little more monitor here. The drummer doesn't need any. This guy needs a little bit. This guy needs a little bit. And you can set up all of your mixes right from that one single input. So that's the individual view, but again, most of the time after you get all those set up, you're going to be operating from the mix view. Now as we continue down this top row of icons, this is a really big one for us, and this is a feature that you're only going to see on the more expensive digital consoles, and we've got it here in the DL32. This actually allows you to assign any input to any output. So if I want to put mic input 1 on channel 6 on my software, I can do that. Any input to any output we can do that with not only the analog inputs, we can do it with the USB inputs, we can do it with the outputs, we can do it with our optional Dante, and then we can assign what microphone input we want to operate as our talkback mic. So that is a huge, huge feature that I was just very impressed with when I first saw it. This button here is where we do our USB recording and playback. This side is 2-channel, this side is multi-track. 2-channel off a USB stick, record or playback. To get into multi-track, you're going to want to get into a USB hard drive. And then lastly, this is kind of a quick access for the engineer. From here we're able to clear our solos, we're able to mute our reverbs and delays, we're able to set tap delays. We've also got monitor output for that monitor output, and we've also got a delay. So if you're using the monitor output for a delay stack, we can actually set that adjustment, and you'll notice up here it not only gives you the setting in milliseconds, but it also gives you the distance in meters and the distance in feet. So very, very comprehensive. Talkback level and a latching talkback switch. So this is where you'd actually access your talkback. Lastly, we have a show button. This is again another very powerful feature of the DL32. And what we're able to do is put specific channels into safe mode, which basically means they cannot be altered. So if you've got, 3 money mics on your presentation setup, we can lock those in so that no matter what the engineer does, he cannot change those settings. And then we can also take all of the parameters of the mixer and store them into a snapshot. And what's nice is we can do that offline. And once we get our show set up, which is this collection of snapshots and things that we've set up in the mixer, we can actually export that to iTunes, to a Dropbox, and we can even email it to the guy on site so that he can access the show you set up and then install it into his DL32. Pretty slick. Now let's take a look at the DSP side on the input. We can access the DSP right here, and you'll notice a couple of things about the user interface. We've got our classic, traditional DL1608 interface, but we also have the ability to go into a vintage mode, and this not only changes the user interface of the compressor and the gate and the EQ, but it also changes the algorithm so that it's actually modeling a very popular historical almost piece of gear that some of you may be familiar with. If we scroll up, we get into our reverb and stereo delay settings. Again, very much like the DL1608. We've already covered this area where we can do assignments and level control to our auxes. And then lastly, we get into our parametric EQ. Again, very, very much like the 1608. But again, we can go into a vintage mode and emulate a very, very strong piece of gear that's been around for a long, long time that a lot of people really like. So that is our DSP for our inputs. Of course, we've got the pan control here. Go back to our mixing screen. We've got our pan control here, and if we want to center that pan control, we can just double tap it. And it'll, if you don't have fat fingers like me, it'll go right to center. We've got our mute control, fader, of course, solo. When we're soloed, these will show up as yellow. There'll also be an indicator right here that says solo. We can, right underneath that, quickly clear the solos if we need to. And that's our solo. Now this is, again, very, very cool. This is adopted from the 1608 legacy. We can change the name of our channel from channel 1, which is the default, to whatever we want to name it. We can also change the image, and the image can come from one of the many, many icons that are in the program. The image can also come from your photographic library, or you can actually even take a picture in real time and just put it on that channel. So if you want to take pictures of your bandmates and put their faces on here, you can do it. Really, really nice. So let's take a look at this area here, which refers to the master section. This is where we'll access our mute groups, and you remember that we have the ability to assign each channel to a mute group. Well, this is where you would access them, and we can also go into our assignment of the mute groups as well. So we can set up all of our mute group assignments and then just quickly access those mute groups from right here. This is where we access all of the auxiliary sends, the left and right, the subgroups, and basically what happens here is we can select auxiliary 5, for instance, and now all of the input faders become a feed for that auxiliary. So you can not only set your levels at the input level, so input 1 goes to aux 1, aux 2, aux 3, and here's the levels, but you can also go to the auxiliary master and have complete control of all of the input levels to that master. So you can do it two different ways. Pretty neat. Back to our left and right view. And then down here is where we access all of our master controls. So these are the master outputs for aux 8, aux 7, and we can access all of our master controls right from this screen as well. So that's the new DL32R from Mackie Designs. We appreciate you watching the video. I hope you see the advantage and the great value that this product brings to the marketplace. If you have any more questions, need more information, please contact your representative at Northern Sound and Light, and I thank you for watching.